From my experience, I've learned that nothing tests your values like betrayal. Marriage is built on trust, but discovering that trust was misplaced can shatter everything you thought you knew about someone and yourself. I learned this the hard way with Nancy. What I thought was a strong, loving marriage turned out to be a carefully hidden lie, one she'd maintained for years. Looking back, the signs were there, but I trusted her completely. I thought I'd married someone who valued loyalty as much as I did. I was wrong. It all started when my closest friend, Adam, asked to meet me at our usual spot, Marlowe's Tavern. Adam wasn't one to sugarcoat things, and when he said he had something important to tell me, I prepared for bad news. I wasn't ready for what he revealed. My wife had been unfaithful to me for years. Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. At first, I didn't believe him. How could I? I loved Nancy, and she claimed to love me. But Adam wasn't the type to make accusations without evidence. As he explained what he knew and how he knew it, denial gave way to anger, then a grim resolve. If she was lying to me, I had to know the full truth. That's when I decided to dig deeper. The more I uncovered, the more her deceit came to light. It wasn't just one betrayal, it was a years-long charade, involving secret meetings, lies about where she was going, and even complicity from people I trusted, like my brother Mason and his wife, Abigail. I thought they were family. Turns out, they'd been covering for her all along. As much as I wanted to rage and confront her right away, I knew I needed proof. I needed to confirm every detail, not just for my own peace of mind but to protect myself when the inevitable fallout came. Over the next few weeks, I set a plan in motion, one that would expose her for who she truly was. After Adam's bombshell revelation, I couldn't sit still. My mind raced through every interaction with Nancy over the years, searching for clues I might have missed. There were plenty, it turned out: her so-called book club meetings, the bridge nights, the weekends I spent away on business trips. At the time, I'd never thought to question her. Now, those moments felt like glaring neon signs pointing to her infidelity. I started piecing things together. Adam's account included specifics, days, times, even the involvement of my brother and sister-in-law. He revealed that Nancy wasn't just unfaithful, she was calculating. She used our home when I was away, hosting her lovers with the help of Mason and Abigail. The betrayal ran deeper than I could stomach. Still, I needed hard evidence. I couldn't accuse her without undeniable proof. With Adam's help, I purchased a small wireless camera disguised as a book. It was motion-activated and could record discreetly. I planned to set it up during my next business trip. Before leaving, I made a deliberate effort to act normal around Nancy. I initiated affection, planned date nights, and even upped our intimacy to throw her off any suspicions she might have had. It was painful to fake that level of closeness, knowing what I knew, but I had to maintain the facade long enough to gather what I needed. On the day of my trip, I placed the camera in our bedroom and left without a word. The recordings confirmed my worst fears. Nancy brought not one but two lovers into our home on separate occasions. She didn't just betray me emotionally, she desecrated the space we'd shared as husband and wife. Watching those videos was agonizing, but it left no doubt about what had to be done. When I returned, I met with a divorce attorney to start the paperwork. My attorney advised waiting until I'd secured the house and locks to serve the papers. I agreed. I couldn't risk her taking advantage of shared property laws to make my life harder. The next step was preparing the house. I contacted a locksmith, changed all the locks, and reprogrammed the garage door. With Adam's help, I moved Nancy's belongings to Mason and Abigail's spare bedroom. I thought it fitting. If they'd been so eager to cover for her, they could deal with the consequences. Once everything was in place, I had the divorce papers served. Nancy's reaction was as dramatic as I expected. She called, pounded on the door, and even tried to force her way into the house. I stayed calm, repeating the same message: all communication goes through my lawyer. Her pleading didn't sway me. She even claimed she wasn't cheating, but her excuses didn't change what I'd seen with my own eyes. Mason wasn't much better. When he heard about the lawsuit I'd filed against him and Abigail for alienation of affection, he stormed into Marlowe's Tavern, yelling and accusing me of being irrational. I didn't back down. I reminded him that his actions, his lies, had cost me my marriage. When he pushed too far, I snapped, landing a punch squarely on his jaw. Despite the fallout, I felt no regret. Mason and Abigail deserved everything coming their way. They'd chosen Nancy over me, and now they could live with the consequences. After the divorce papers were served, the real storm began. Nancy wasn't one to back down quietly. She tried every angle, calling me repeatedly, showing up at the house unannounced, and even breaking a window to get inside. Her persistence didn't surprise me, but her audacity did. When I found her standing in the kitchen after breaking in, she argued that the house was as much hers as it was mine. Legally, she wasn't wrong, but the boldness of her intrusion only hardened my resolve. I refused to let her manipulate me. Our conversations, if you could even call them that, grew increasingly hostile. She accused me of being unreasonable, of blowing things out of proportion, and even of violating her privacy by using surveillance cameras. I didn't argue. The evidence spoke for itself. Eventually, Nancy shifted her approach. Instead of anger, she tried guilt. She admitted to having an intimate relationship with Abigail but claimed it wasn't cheating because there were no other men involved. According to her, she'd hidden it from me because she knew I'd react poorly, not because she thought it was wrong. She painted herself as the victim, someone forced to lie because of my so-called rigid beliefs. Hearing her justification only deepened my sense of betrayal. She said she needed both a man and a woman to feel fulfilled and insisted she'd given me everything a wife should. She argued that our marriage hadn't suffered, that our intimacy had been frequent and loving, and that her relationship with Abigail had no bearing on her love for me. But it wasn't just about physical intimacy. It was about trust, honesty, and commitment, the foundations of marriage. Nancy had kept a part of her life hidden from me for years. Worse, she'd involved my own family in her deceit. Her rationale didn't matter. She'd broken her vows. When I asked her if she could let go of Abigail and focus solely on our marriage, her response was telling, "I'm not giving up Abigail." That was all I needed to hear. The fight was over. She might have been willing to compromise eventually, but by then, it didn't matter. Her first instinct had been to choose Abigail, not me. I told her as much, explaining that even if she changed her mind, it was too late. I couldn't rebuild a marriage on fractured trust. I couldn't be with someone who had proven they'd lie for years if it suited them. Nancy didn't understand, or perhaps she didn't want to. She accused me of being closed-minded and selfish, but her words didn't sting anymore. I was past the point of caring. The divorce was finalized quickly. Nancy moved out and spent several months living in Mason and Abigail's spare room, which felt like poetic justice. I didn't pursue my alienation of affection lawsuit any further, the damage was already done. What I did do, however, was sever ties with Mason and Abigail. Mason tried to make amends, but I couldn't forgive him. Whether or not he had been physically involved with Nancy, he had betrayed me by covering for her. To me, that was just as bad. Abigail tried to smooth things over as well, but I shut her out just the same. I couldn't bring myself to trust either of them anymore. For months after the divorce, I struggled to move forward. I'd loved Nancy. I still did, in some ways, and part of me always would. But love wasn't enough to overlook what she'd done. Trust is the cornerstone of any relationship, and once it's gone, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Eventually, I began dating again, though cautiously. I met someone, April, who understood my hesitation and appreciated my honesty about my past. When I told her about Nancy, she laughed lightly and assured me she valued fidelity as much as I did. Over time, she helped me rediscover what it felt like to trust someone again. Closing that chapter of my life wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The divorce left scars, not just on my view of Nancy but on how I saw myself. I questioned my judgment, my ability to trust, and my willingness to open up to someone new. But in the end, I realized that Nancy's choices didn't define me. What mattered was how I chose to rebuild after the wreckage. With April, things were different. She valued honesty and transparency in a way that Nancy never had. We built our relationship on mutual trust and respect, discussing our goals, fears, and expectations openly. When she hinted that she wanted a long-term commitment, I asked if she had any secrets I needed to know. Her response was simple and reassuring. "I'm all about loyalty. That's non-negotiable for me." We got married last spring. Now, she's expecting our first child, and I'm preparing for fatherhood with a sense of hope and excitement I hadn't felt in years. While my past with Nancy will always linger in my memory, it no longer defines my present. I've moved forward with someone who shares my values, and I'm determined to create a future built on the trust one once thought I'd lost forever. As for Nancy, I don't know much about her life now. She remarried, but whether she told her new husband the truth about her past, I'll never know. My relationship with Mason remains strained. We've managed to attend family events without incident, but there's no real connection left between us. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. Looking back, I realized that what happened wasn't just about Nancy's actions. It was a lesson in recognizing my own boundaries and standing by them. Staying true to what I believe, what I need from a relationship, came at a cost, but it was worth it. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thanks for reading, and take care.